This is breaking news. I've just been told that we're not supposed to be drinking the tap water at all. Full stop. Not just no good for the newborns and the babies. Nobody should be drinking it because it's just, forget it. This is crazy. We're talking about a city of 30 million people living here. You don't want to look outside.
This evidence is very damning in terms of what's going on. And now they're telling the people that the water's safe for children in Tokyo when it's not. It's not
No,
safe.
it's ridiculous. And it's not only that. We're talking about this MOX mixture, this plutonium-uranium mixture, which is extremely dangerous. I mean, plutonium is highly lethal, as you already mentioned. And another thing that we need to mention here is that the cover-up has gone to the extreme where we have an engineer that worked for Hitachi in the construction of the reactor in reactor number 4, and he said that in order to circumvent expenses, they used the cheapest form of steel and concrete in order to protect the reactor, the core. So if that happened on the number 4 reactor, imagine number 3, 2, and 1 when Hitachi spent $250 million in each encasing, and these encasings are faulty from the get-go.
Well, the story is this morning is that those workers apparently stepped into a pool of water that contained 10,000 times the amount of radiation that had been advertised beforehand. And apparently they were not nuclear workers. They were laying cable. They were from the cable industry. So he was burned very quickly, and they went out and measured the water then, and they said it was 10,000 times what they expected.
Which means the pipes are broken then, right? It means the pipes to the reactor core and the most dangerous reactor are not functioning normally, and the reactor core has been breached.
Well, they're saying the breach could mean a leak has been seeping for days. I mean, that's putting a spin on it.
That's the mildest twist on this, because they don't want to ever admit the fact that they have a China syndrome in progress in one or more points in this reactor complex.
Yeah, well, reactor 3 is the reactor that burns plutonium, and so it's even more dangerous. It's more dangerous than the other
20,000 times more dangerous.
20,000 times. So that might explain why we're seeing radiation in the jet stream. Both Oregon and Colorado have reported increase in background radiation.
Yeah, so those voices out there, they're trying to say that it's only a problem for northern Japan. They need to get a reality check. The entire planet is being bathed with internal radiation toxic nanoparticles that are now in every continent.
Well, radiation levels in the sea near Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant have spiked to more than 1,000 times the norm. It's been over 2 weeks now since the devastating earthquake and tsunami which caused the accident at the facility. The official death toll from the disaster stands at over 10,000 people, with many more missing or homeless. Emergency teams are still struggling to control the situation at the stricken Fukushima nuclear plant. Several workers sustained radiation burns while installing cables as part of efforts to restore the critical cooling systems. Nuclear energy experts say the damage to the site is having a dangerous effect on the environment and on people's health.
I think it's catastrophic. I think that the narrative that we've had for the last week or so, which is that we're trying to fix the problem or get it under control, is misleading. I think that there's evidence of radiation having entered the environment in large amounts. It's turning up in lots of places, in water and food. It's even being detected far away. What this could mean is that there is really a significant entry of radiation going on into the environment right now, and that there doesn't appear to be any halt to it in the near future. So that's very catastrophic. This is not something that is a situation that may get out of control. This is a situation that is having a catastrophic impact currently already. I would say it's significantly dangerous. There's been high levels of radiation detected out at the 20-kilometer limit already. And what you have when you have radiation levels of that level is that in a week or two, you'll have people that are experiencing the radiation exposure of nuclear plant workers, over the course of their career. And these are people in a situation where there's been an earthquake, there's been a tsunami, there's a shortage of food, there's a shortage of water, so their health is already stressed. Their bodies are already stressed. They may not be in heated homes at night, they may not be getting electricity, so the impact of these exposures will be even larger. To receive in the course of a week or two the exposures that nuclear plant workers receive in their entire lives is rather dire, and these people should not be allowed to remain in such an exposure area.
To understand what situation the Japanese workers are finding themselves in right now, can you explain to us what was it like to work in Chernobyl?
There was a great deal of work to be done, but we only had seconds or minutes to do the job if we wanted to avoid a long-term impact on human health. Can you imagine what the conditions were like? According to statistics from the UN report, more than 650,000 rescuers took part in dealing with the consequences of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant accident. We estimated the situation and saw that the reactor core fragments were scattered over a wide area. Add to that atmospheric movement. So we realized that there was every reason to cover what could be the source of further radioactive discharges. A shelter had to be built. It was another matter what kind of shelter, but covering it was a must. It was decided that after a sarcophagus was built, people would be able to come close to it, and that radiation measurements on its surface shouldn't exceed 1 Röntgen an hour. That was unattainable, I regret to say, but the walls did show something near it. Where we failed was the roof. The work was on the verge of engineering risks. You had to have intuition and an immense amount of courage. The situation began to change, and that enabled helicopters to fly at lower altitudes for better observation. We developed specialized bathyscaphe tanks, inside which people were lowered. Every day we gained new knowledge. Every day we introduced certain modifications, and as a result, it became possible to do it within a brief period.
What happened to those who worked at the Chernobyl power plant after the explosion? Do you know the stories of those people? How many survived?
Today I don't have the statistics about how many of us are already dead. I think it's quite a lot. Disability accounts for 60 or 70,000 of the 650,000 rescuers. In fact, the Chernobyl tragedy affected my whole family. Being a professional, I understood that there was no one to do that job except for the professionals. It's clear. Second, my wife dealt with nuclear energy. She also visited the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Regrettably, today she has cancer.
Yeah, the background radiation for a person in the United States, the average annual effective dose, now this is annual, is 3.6 millisieverts.
Per year.
And, per year.
Yeah.
So they're getting a lot more than that. Now, the other important unit, although they haven't put out much news on it, at least today, is Unit 4. And that's because it was shut down about 4 months ago for maintenance. And so all of the fuel rods were put into the spent fuel rod pool.
Yeah, that's something they didn't mention earlier, that the rods were taken out different than even reactor 5 and 6. They did something funny there, which is take out these little reactor rods that could become hot again, and then just pile them up there. When they lost their coolant, they started to China syndrome.
Yes. This is very, very dangerous because they are not in a containment vessel of any kind. There's no stainless steel around them. There's nothing around them, essentially, except for concrete and reinforced concrete. So that is a real concern, and I think that they know that. I think that they know that the meltdown has begun there. And
they should start turning this into a nuclear sarcophagus where they put in boron and borax. The French brought in 750 tons. I don't see any move toward entombing these reactors.
Well, I don't either, and that's surprising because...
It is. It's scary. It's like, what the heck are they pulling off? And, of course, the Japanese government and the courts there have already preemptively said, well, this is an act of God, so TEPCO won't be charged, and the Japanese government and the taxpayer in Japan and people worldwide and third parties that are injured. If you happen to be a tourist and are getting treated, there's 2 people, I think, is it from China, that have already been treated for radiation injury that lived in the area. And as I mentioned before, the exclusion zone, the radiation is 10 times the peak level within the 50-kilometer exclusion zone, and they still didn't remove those people when the Russians removed their people within 3 days of that radiation, and it's 10 times higher. These people in Japan are crazy. The politicians are nuts. The TEPCO are nuts. The IAEA are lying, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission are trying to cover because they know this tsunami against the nuclear industry is not going to stop.
Yeah, in that zone from 12 to 20 miles from the plant, they had told the residents to stay indoors, but now they've asked them that they're saying that they can voluntarily evacuate.
How crazy is that?
But they aren't helping them. I mean,
no,
they have to go
they're going to
outdoors.
cover the cost of evacuation, but they don't even have enough basic food supplies and even clean water. They only give like 2 minutes in Japan, and they get 20 minutes or so about Gaddafi and what the United Nations is going to do.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
They have no authority anyway, the United Nations.
Exactly. The United Nations they should plow that down and destroy it. America shouldn't have any part to do in the so-called United Nations. All of them are being inflamed right now, all these nations in North Africa and the Middle East. It's a walk toward the abyss, a walk toward Armageddon, lining up the Shia and Shiite nations. And the globalist bankers want to use this and use Japan. And I posted up an article, too, from Tim Alexander. The evidence is starting to accumulate that there may indeed have been if you want to call it, a tweaking of this earthquake and tsunami that struck Japan by the use of scalar weapons. So there is starting to accumulate some evidence now that makes it more than just that's a raving lunatic kind of statement. It may actually have not only the modus operandi and the reasons to do it, but there may be some technical issues like magnetometry and other evidence that it's possible they use this. We know they did in Japan before with the earthquake that struck one of the reactors a few years ago. We know they used it in Western China. Now there's starting to accumulate some evidence that it might have been, believe it or not, as obscene as that is, as shocking as that is, it may actually have been triggered.
Well, I had Tim Alexander on my show earlier this week, and he went into some detail of what he feels is evidence that this is the case. It is beyond shocking. It is a barbaric crime against humanity.
Yeah, exactly. Not just against the Japanese people, because it appears at the rate we're going that most of northern Japan will be a hot zone, and that, in fact, the radiation is going to bathe the planet. And if we multiply the amount of radiation already released, we can assume there'll be 10 times more dead, meaning 10 million. And instead of 4 million injured, we'll have 40 million injured from the radiation. That's just conservative estimates so far. And it looks like it's going to get a lot worse before it actually gets these reactors become entombed, because we don't have one reactor, we got 6.
The situation is getting worse and worse. He's telling me that in the media they're just reporting that everything is fine. It's not fine. We have confirmation that Reactor 3 is exposed now. Now it's an official confirmation. We have an unofficial confirmation that they're already at level 6 of 7. So that means that this thing is going to blow if they don't entomb it now, as you clearly mentioned.
Yeah, China syndrome is in progress at least at 2 of these reactors already.
Exactly. And what What we need to do is we need to understand that this is an international incident that has to be attended right now.
Millions of people are living here, and yet we've just been told we shouldn't drink the water, and that to me also spells, well, don't shower in it either.